So who'd like to start off today and maybe address one of those questions or give some reflections about finishing well? And Bill, you might not know this, but Damien actually spoke on Are You a Finisher several months ago. So we had a little bit of a discussion, but what a great entry point you have for us today to take this even deeper. And the example of Asa is one example of a guy who, like you say, had a great start, not a good finisher though. And so who'd like to begin today, this discussion on any of these questions or a thought from Bill's talk today?
Hey, Rod, I in my journal, I've got notes about Asa. I've gone to church all my life. I don't know that I've heard any sermons about Asa. Maybe I was asleep and I just missed them. But I find this guy fascinating. I hope first of all, the Lord comes back. But if I have to die and have a funeral, I want people to be able to say Stephen White did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just like Asa. I think that's a powerful statement in and of itself. And Bill, Asa, I mean, the second phrase is he had some kahunas when he kicked his grandmother out. Man, that was bold. I liked everything I read about this guy. But for the guys in this group this morning, we have a choice to make. Because at one point, Asa decided not to be coachable. And he comes across as a bitter old man. And is that the way I really want to finish my life out?
Wow. Because
he was confronted. He had some choices to make there. And he couldn't have been any more wrong. And when you read about Asa, it just sounds like he went back into his bedroom and sat there and pouted. And worse than that, and this guy that had been this vibrant force for God all these years just decided, you know what, this just didn't play out the way I thought it should. I'm just going to go off in the back room by myself and pout and be angry and bitter the rest of my life. And what does it say that this guy that was on fire for the Lord when he was sick at the end of his life wouldn't even reach out to him? This guy fascinates me. I really do. And I in my journals, one of the things I put on there is I want to finish like Asa started. I'm 64, so I don't know how much time I got left. But to me, Asa is a fascinating guy. So I'll be quiet.
That's good, Steve. Man, thank you. Thank you so much. Anybody else want to add to what Steve shared or something that struck you from Asa's story or any of these questions? Jerry, looks like you're ready to go. You got unmuted there.
A lot of questions here. Try to pick out one here. Going back to God first, spouse second, family third, ministry work is fourth. I've heard that different ways. You've got ministry and work together. I've heard work comes before ministry. And then if you've got those four things kind of lined up, or you're using or helping and tracking with God on all four of these, then you really got something to say in your ministry. You know, you got witness words and witness experiences. So it's, you know, and all that subject is about balancing your life. Well, it's really not about balancing. It's putting God first and, you know, putting spouse second. You know, what comes into play more than if you're in the workforce, work comes in or can creep in front of all of those, especially on a given moment or a given week or crisis or whatever, or strategic plans or whatever. So anyway, that's always a good subject to talk about. Oh boy. I love that today's challenges don't work with yesterday's faith. Got to keep changing. Got to get up, show up, lean forward. I'm taking therapy for my sciatic nerve. And one thing the therapist is doing, he says, well, you need to lean in a little bit, but stand straight enough that you can, like the ladies in the Old Testament, they carried stuff on their head. and that keeps your posture and your back lined up right. So a little bit of leaning forward, but upright, and tracking, aligned. I think that's important.
Love it, Jerry. Love it, love it. Good. Anybody else?
Yeah, Bill, great message. Thank you. One of the things that I've been sharing lately with some men is I want to finish well. And that's what you're alluding to here, starting out, continuing on, but finishing well, crossing that finish line to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. So so many things that for me, required, I think the sharpening from each other to encourage each other, the spurring on, right? To not isolate, which at times that can happen, but to make sure that we're around each other as far as brothers in Christ, but to seek Him on a daily basis, to pursue that with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. Like you said, there's a cost, there's a price to that, but it's dying to self on a daily basis. All those things to want to finish well. So to me, this message is just kind of playing into where God has me right now, which is a good thing. But making sure, going back here, that God is first in what I do on a daily basis, and that's lived out in every facet of my life. The things that He's trying to work in me at the time. So that's, for me anyway, it's right along with where God has me right now, to finish well, to stay the course, and where I'm at now compared to a few years ago. I see the change there, but I have hesitancy at times to embrace that change. That my initial reaction is fear, possibly. So replacing fear with faith. So that's part of the process that he's showing me. So, but messages like this continue to encourage me to continue, living life for Him as he's working in me. So, thank you for the message. I love the rest part back here, that Matthew 11:28-29 has been one of my favorite verses. So that's, as we seek Him, it's crazy, but as you're talking about, as you are fully in for Him and being active, there's rest that comes within that as rest in Christ, not in things of this world. So anyway, thank you for sharing. Appreciate it very much.
Great, Scott. Thank you, buddy.
Well, Bill, one of the words that Scott just used, encouraged. I thank you for that. I don't know who it was I heard say, and I probably heard multiple people say it, but we can't stay static in our Christian life, and we certainly don't want to go back. And so it's times like this, and maybe I'm in the right place, hopefully, where I'm encouraged to be reminded of that I've been doing ministry now for somewhere around 40 years. And I can remember early days when there was just such an enthusiasm, and there are days where I don't feel that same enthusiasm, and I have to stop and really check myself, because I can't live on, like you said here, yesterday's faith. I love that thought that faith must stay current. I needed to hear that if I needed to hear anything today. And so I appreciate hearing that, because it does bring encouragement to me. And the whole idea about faith being the most important thing, I've heard it the same way you have, that God is first, spouse second, family third, on and on. And again, something I heard probably over 3 decades ago, someone said, if you're too busy to spend time with God, then you're busier than he intends for you to be. And if we ever get that part right, where God truly is first and he stays first, those other things are going to fall into place in their proper order, I believe. But it's when we keep our faith and when we keep God number one. And whether I'm a layman in the church or a pastor in the church body, I've got to be reminded of that. And so that's just a great encouragement and reminder for me today. Stay current, keep God first, and allow the Lord to line those other things up in my life. So, brother, I knew you would bring it well, and you did. And so I just appreciate you being his mouthpiece today. So thank you, man.
I mentioned in my early comments before Bill even started that I had been studying this word called envy. And let me just read something from my morning devotional before Bill got on today that ties so well with what you just shared, Bill. It says, when the envy rules your heart, the love of God doesn't. Let's think about what envy does. It assumes that you deserve blessings that you don't deserve. And when your heart is ruled by envy, the attitude I am blessed gets replaced with the attitude I deserve. Envy is selfish to the core. Envy puts you in the center of the world. It makes everything all about you. It causes you to examine life from a sole perspective of your wants, your needs, your feelings. Sadly, envy causes you to question the goodness, the faithfulness, and the wisdom of God. Envy accuses God of not knowing what he's doing or of not being faithful to what he's promised to do. When you're convinced that a blessing is that another person has ought to belong to you, you don't just have a problem with that person, you got a problem with God. And when you begin to question God's goodness, you quit going to him for help. Why? Because you don't seek the help of someone you come to doubt. Envy does something else that is spiritually deadly. It assumes understand that no one has. Envy not only assumes that you know more about that person's life than you ever could know, it assumes you have a clear understanding of what is best than God does. Furthermore, envy causes you to forget God's amazing rescuing, transforming, empowering, and delivering grace. You come so occupied with the kind of what you do not have that the enormous blessing of God's grace, the blessings that we could not have earned, achieved, or deserved, go unrecognized, uncelebrated, because envy focuses more on what you want than on the life that God has called you to. It keeps you from paying attention to God's commands and warnings, and therefore leaves you in moral danger. And so just a reminder, man, when we start going on that trail, and that's probably a partial cause of what we see in Asa's life. He started looking around, and like Steve White said, he was unteachable. He got distracted. He put other things first, and now he's concerned about all these other things, and God takes a secondary back seat, and he starts running the show. And man, it just leads to a miserable life, because you're looking around going, man, I got nothing to be thankful for, and everybody else is blessed, and everybody and you just get so distracted by everything going on, and that's not a good way to finish, guys. That's just not a good way to finish, and it's a recipe for disaster. And that's exactly what we see Asa doing here. He got that envy, that self-sufficiency, that being ungrateful, and it just spirals, and all of a sudden you find yourself going, man, I'm a wretched man. I don't know if Asa ever admitted that, but the end of his story is not good. It says, well, he just kind of died, and left so much on the table. So I don't want to go down that route, guys. Anybody else got a word for us today?
I think envy has a close friend named entitlement. Entitlement. When we get to that position, we start envying those around us, we feel entitled. Why don't I? Why? Yeah. So I just think, they go hand in hand.
Absolutely, they do.
One of my favorite sections of the Bible is Hebrews 11. Talks about how the heroes of the Bible started Abel and Abraham and Joseph, all of those people, when faced with major change in their life, had to do something different. It starts by faith. They all entered that change in their life, and that's always inspired me. And I mentioned both of these recently. A couple of people who had their priorities right. One was Tom Landry, who was the coach of the Dallas Cowboys. When he was about to be fired, someone said of him that, "Don't worry about Tom Landry. That job is at best fourth in the things that are important to him. His faith, his family, his country, and so forth." And another one was, I actually heard this guy say this in a talk. His name's Jeff Comment. He was the chairman of the Helzberg Diamonds. I think Rod has heard or knows of him too. Anyway, Barnett Helzberg, who is not a Christian, I'm sure, asked him what his priorities are when he was being interviewed to be chairman of Helzberg. And Jeff said, "My Christian faith, my family, country, and this job is fourth." And Barnett Helzberg said, "Great, you're hired. That's exactly what I want." And those things, that's been quite a while for both of those, but that's things that I've remembered.
I'm glad you mentioned Larry Jeff Comment. By the way, he passed way too early. He's a good man, and he actually predates Character That Counts. He was one of the guys that was instrumental in helping encourage me to launch CTC probably a couple of years before it ever officially launched. So we were together on a mentoring retreat with Colonial Press and spent some private time with him, and he saw things that I didn't see. He was a visionary guy, and he was very instrumental in me taking that step of faith to launch this ministry, because of his courage to have his priorities right and his ability to speak truth. And so he was one of those early guys, along with Joe, even before Joe Calhoun began to speak into me about this. Jeff was one of those guys that began to speak truth to me. So love hearing that name. That what a great finisher he was. Love it. Anybody else?
I have perhaps not a different spin, but a different perspective on this. My mom died at 69 of a stroke, and so I'm now 69, going to be 70 next year. So I got that same connection with Bill. But I've been a believer for over 50 years now, and I have, for the majority of that time, I've been what I call a sleepwalking Christian. And so it hasn't been until about 3 years ago, when my daughter died of a stroke, that God used one of the low moments in my life to wake me up. And I'm not sleepwalking anymore. I'm on the path to discipleship. And Psalms 90:12 is one of my favorite verses. Lord, teach us the brevity of life. What is the beginning of wisdom? And so I'm now a disciple, trying to be a follower of Christ. And even though I have joined the race a little late in my 50-year belief period, I need to finish, and I need to finish well. And that's a lesson I need to take to heart. So thank you very much for your message, Bill.
Beautiful. And I love the spin you have, because that's exactly the message we all need to have, finishing well. Love it, Jim. Thank you. Anybody else?
Bill, on the same theme that Jim has just talked about, if I could encourage you, age is just a number. It's got nothing to do with anything else. And I have great fun in asking people, how old do you think I am? And I think probably the best one was 55. Well, I'm 79. I'm only a few months away from the octogenarian. Jerry Calloway beat me. It's got nothing to do with parents. My dad died at the age of 71. He had almost every disease you can imagine, including polio. But just looking to God first. You've talked about this all the time today. Yeah, just a wonderful way of putting forward God's word. And I thank you for that. But I do encourage you, do think of age as a number. It's got nothing to do with it.
Mm.
And for God, one day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day.
Right.
For him,
Right.
it's all nothing for him. It's like he sees the future, and it's like it's just amazing to think that way.
Right. But he says, as if 1,000 years, not as 1,000 years. So he's just trying to say that a day in his time is nothing. Right. And it's like we look in the Bible and it says the earth was created in 7 days, but those were God's days. We can't relate that to the 24 hours that we know as a day. His time is totally different to our time.
You know, Moses, his most impactful time of life happened after he was 80.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I spent 40 years in the corporate world. In fact, it only came to me today when you were talking that, yes, just like Moses. So am I going to be doing what I do now, which is teach and coach people in live communication? Am I going to be doing that for 40 years? I sincerely hope so. I got 21 behind me.
Mm.
Never think of those years as a time that you understand. Don't work like that.
There's a lot of entry points for today for us, guys. I mean, rest, rejoice, refresh, keep current, make your life count. So many things. And I'm going to go back to that word change that we, sometimes it's hard to change, but we got to stay fresh, guys. We got to stay current. If we're going to be effective in the race that God has called us to run here. So many good talking points. Anybody else?
I think of another word, abide.
Yeah. Amen, brother.
I've been looking for scriptures that focus on abide and dwell, and that's abiding and dwelling in Jesus.
Yeah.
And we talked about last night at a men's group discussion. That was very, very, very good stuff.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, anything else you want to say? You get the last word here today. Some good reaction, good response here. Was that kind of some of the stuff you were hoping we'd get to discuss?
Yes, definitely. And just thinking about what it is that you are proactively doing to strengthen the walls of your heart, of your family. What is it that you're doing for your personal devotions? It's great to go to TGIW, but boy, you and I have got to do more than just that, just going to church. Every day, I need to be meeting with God personally and gleaning from his word, listening to his Holy Spirit, and speaking to him. So there's nothing more important than your walk with him. And so just a few of those questions kind of dealt a little bit with that. What are you doing proactively to walk with God?
Hey, Bill, got a question for you. Had you done any deep dive study into Asa's life pre Jen doing this BSF study on Divided Kingdom, or is this a new, fresh message for you?
This is a new, fresh message. I had gone through Bible Survey a couple of different times, early in ministry and then halfway through ministry. And by halfway through, I mean 20 years ago, 15 years ago, taking classes again towards seminary. So I've been through Second Chronicles, and I've read Asa's story before, but to actually dig in and recognize some of these different things and how they can apply to us, they came, when my wife spurred me on and just asked, hey, what do you think of Asa and this and that? And our discussion just brought into light, wow, where I am personally, and that I think this journey is where a lot of us are as men.
Yeah. Yeah, I love when the Lord reveals to us a fresh story that, again, we might have perused, might have just glanced over, not really dug in deep, but it's stories like Asa's that we can learn so many things. And the smart guy, the wise guy, is that looks at other people's lives and learns from them and says, either I want to go there or I don't want to go there. And that can be a real motivator for us as we kind of navigate our situations is looking at history, looking at situations, looking at these characters from even the Old Testament and saying, hey, that's a guy I want to mimic, or that's a guy I want to avoid the perils he went down. So that's remaining teachable. That's remaining coachable too. Awesome. Anybody else?
I guess you could say Paul was a good finisher.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, he sure was. Of course, we're looking at Greg's looking at Philippians right now, and there's so many things he says at the end that, as he's wrapping up his life, and he is able to say, I have fought the good fight, I've finished the course, I've kept the faith, and now there's a reward, a prize awaiting me, because he knew he had run the race the right way. And that's what we want to do. That's what all of us want to do, guys. All right. Anybody else? All right, carry on, gentlemen. We got a great battle out there. It's great to hook arms with you, to battle with you every week, and this encourages me to stay in the fight. Encourages me to keep my eyes fixed on the Lord, and love that I got battle buddies doing it with me. So God bless each one of you. Okay, carry on.